Oh, from New York, New York, you are listening to Extra Time, presented by AT&T 5G. I'm Andrew Wiebe with my partners in soccer, Matt Doyle, David Goss, behind the scenes, but always in our hearts and minds, Anders Arhus, producing Anders. This is our World Cup qualifying preview show. CONCACAF specific with a little CONMEBOL mixed in because there are MLSers involved in that as well, all over the world, by the way. I think it was like 82 players from different, 82 nations represented in MLS these days. So if you want a little factoid, there it is. We're going to go through it all. Coming up today on the AT&T 5G virtual studios, Jaime Macias on Costa Rica and Panama and MLSers in CONMEBOL. We are going to run through the perspective in this window for the U.S., for Canada, a little bit for Mexico, for Costa Rica, for Panama. Who's going to get those 3.5 spots in the World Cup from CONCACAF? That's what it's all about. And we'll start with this, guys. Kevin Grove, shout out to Matt Doyle for the feeling of dread and impending doom I'm starting my day with on Extra Time. I have a feeling everybody's going to be feeling that way, except for Canada fans, perhaps, over the next 8 days or so, at least through March 30th. It's all to play for. Doyle, we kind of know how you feel. Dave, how you feeling, man? How you living these days?
It's been tough. I'm not going to lie. I was already there before Doyle brought me there yesterday, so I appreciate him just kind of guiding me off the cliff. I thought that was really sweet of him.
Hold my hand as jump.
Yeah, we always need... Yeah, exactly. You always need someone in life to be with you. I have come up a bit this morning because I've been just watching Mexico the whole morning. So I watched their game against Panama and their game against Costa Rica in the last window. And the positive is that Mexico sucks. And so if you think the U.S. sucks, you're greeted on the other side by someone who feels the same way. So that's a little bit of a pick-me-up in this moment. But yeah, it's I think me and Doyle were together when Cuva happened. I don't think Wiebe was with us.
We were all together.
You were there that night as well.
I actually rewatched.
Wow, erase me from your memories,
rewatched some of our postgame from Cuva.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
God, why would you do
how
that?
Was it?
The vibes were bad. It was a bad vibes show.
I remember that. It's a very vivid evening for me. And I remember it sort of, it kind of felt like perhaps an election in some places where you thought it was all very safe and secure and you were very happy, depending on your point of view. And then it all just seemed to disintegrate block by block.
Fast.
It's like standing on you're on an iceberg and it's melting and you're like, wait a second, like half of this thing's gone. Like, what if the other, oh my God, I'm in the water. Like, we are in the water. It's over. We're not, you look around, you're like, I can't believe it. We're in the water. How could we possibly be in the water? No, nobody, we should never be in the water. That was my feeling.
Hijacked my depressing story and then started throwing in his own analogies. My point was,
we're drowning.
My point was at that moment, it looked like it was such a far gap to the next meaningful moment. And the next, this game means something, this game matters. We're watching CJ Sapong play against Portugal. We're watching Timothy Weah score against the Bolivian G team. Like, nothing mattered for a while. And then you had COVID and it threw everything off. And so this does feel like, obviously, we've been through a stretch of time. It also feels the closest to normal of it's the U.S. at the Azteca. There'll be some fans in the stadium, Costa Rica as well. They're two nightmare spots. This is sort of like the thing we're kind of used to. And so I'm glad to be at this point because I can't look forward to this point anymore. I'm ready to get past it.
Yeah, there's some missteps along the way that we'll go back and I'm sure we'll talk about of points that were dropped that from a U.S. perspective put us in a position you're in now, which is not secure, but more on the side of secure than not. And we'll hit you with these scenarios. I just want to say the side, we're talking about the U.S. side and this existential dread and anxiety and all these different things. And I'm sure Canada fans have a little bit of that, but they're also going to be in a game that could get them into the World Cup regardless. Like they are already qualified to be in at least the playoff. So they are playing to cement their spot in the World Cup. And if they win all these games, perhaps to be in pot 3 when the draw happens on April 1st. So from a Canadian perspective, this is perhaps the biggest celebration. Not perhaps. Should be the biggest celebration in the history of the men's game, because the women have done all this. This is not a new thing for them, of the men's game in Canada. So it's two differing perspectives. Meanwhile, Mexico's hanging on. Panama and Costa Rica are thinking, why not us? Why can't we do this? And those are really the 5 teams that matter right now. look, let's set the scene in a second. I do just want to remind people, you mentioned MLS Today. Dave, you're going to be live every morning, 11 a.m. Eastern on MLS Today. Twitter Spaces, of course. We also now have the podcast feed, MLS Today, where the Power Rankings show will go. We're doing the reverse Power Rankings on this Tuesday, and that's when we're recording this show. By the way, Doyle and I are doing the bottom 10 teams because, look, they deserve something, too. And MLS After Dark goes up there as well. So if you subscribe to Extra Time, you enjoy Extra Time, you need a little bit of extra MLS in your ears from time to time throughout the week, go subscribe and rate MLS Today, wherever you listen to podcasts. And we also have these watch-along shows. We've sort of transitioned. We've always have done the post-game shows and put them on the ETR channel. They're not going to be on the ETR podcast feed anymore. We will be talking about it on Extra Time on Mondays and Thursdays, of course. But Club and Country watch-along shows are going to be on Twitch and YouTube Live. We'll have a pregame show. We will watch the game with you. I don't know whether to be excited about that or really nervous about that.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous about this one.
Seeing through the looking glass of how are people, it's almost just like being completely exposed in one of your most vulnerable moments, but we'll see how that goes. Thursday at Azteca, as well as Canada, Costa Rica.
I will
DeMarcus
say this.
Beasley, myself, Doyle Kalin on that watch along.
Sorry, I think I'm freezing.
Are you going to say it?
You're not. No, you're not freezing. You guys are just talking over each other. I was trying to talk through
you.
The first USMNT jersey I ever purchased was a DeMarcus Beasley one, like a long time ago. So it'd be pretty cool to watch a soccer game with him. It would be better if the US was already clinched, but it'll be pretty cool.
Yeah, we're going to try to pull the best stories out of Bees. I'm just curious to see how he watches and experiences this match. You know, it's not just like, hey, let's get a couple sound bites from you afterwards, join the postgame show. Like, it is DeMarcus Beasley for 2 hours as the U.S. attempt to get a result in Azteca with World Cup qualification on the line. And remember, he was a part of this team in 2014 or 2013 that didn't get it done. So that'll be interesting. What? Sunday, we'll be there for both games because, he was on the bench in Cuba.
No, that was 2017. He went to the 2014 World Cup.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Was he on the bench in Cuba?
He was on the bench in Cuba.
In 2017?
Yeah, I just went back and looked at that team.
Wow.
You can double check me, but perhaps the box score lies. He has a myriad of experiences to dig into. Sunday we'll be there for both games because Canada and the U.S. play at different times. So Dave and I will be watching the Canada game with Canada guests, and then Susanna, Matt, and Kaylin are going to be with U.S. guests. Then Wednesday the 30th, when it all gets decided, Sasha Kleshin will join us. We'll have special guests as well, trying to get some Canadian voices in there to watch what should be a triumphant day for Canada, and we hope for the U.S. as well. And then the World Cup draw is April 1st, so it's all happening. Susanna, Matt, Kaylin, and Bees will be doing that one live, so you can watch it all with us.
Just based off the experience when TFC hosted MLS Cup and how much of a shining moment it was for Canada, and the fact that Dero wore a Canada colored camo jacket with the fur, I cannot even wait to see what Sunday looks like against Jamaica. And we've also got Jamaica, which is a vibe in Toronto on its own. Oh my God! Maybe I'm skipping. I might go. I might be out on the show. Sorry.
Here's the. We'll just do it live from there. Here's the scene setter for you. First in the octagonal, Canada, 25 points plus 14 goal differential. Nobody's within 4 points. Nobody's within 5 goals on goal differential. That's the first and second tiebreaker. As we said, they are going to play for a spot, whether it's in these 3 games or an additional game, probably against New Zealand, for a place in Qatar. U.S. is second on goal differential, 21 points. Mexico's third on 21 points, but U.S. plus 9, Mexico plus 6. So right now we have advantage in that sense. Then Panama in fourth on 17. Costa Rica resurgent in the last window, up to 16, both plus 1 goal differential. Match day 12, Mexico hosting U.S. at Azteca. Costa Rica and San Jose hosting Canada. Panama hosting Honduras, who are already eliminated. Match day 13, U.S. at home against Panama. We'll talk a lot about that here in a second. Canada hosting Jamaica, already eliminated. Honduras hosting Mexico. El Salvador hosting Costa Rica. Match day 14, TBD on where it would all stand after this one, or before this one, I should say. Costa Rica hosting the U.S. Difficult game for the U.S. Panama hosting Canada, perhaps with their lives on the line. And Mexico hosting El Salvador. Let's just, let's tell people what's at stake. Let's do the nutshell here. Doyle, what's the nutshell for the U.S.? We've got missing players. No Weston McKennie. No Brendan Aronson. He came to camp, then they said, no, not going to happen there. George Bello is in because Serginho Dest is out. Matt Turner is having continuing injury issues and is not in this squad. Yellow cards, Tyler Adams, Weah, P-Folk, Stefan, Yedlin. What is the scene for the U.S. in this moment?
A home win over Panama guarantees the U.S. no lower than 4th. So a home win over Panama, 2 losses, means the U.S. finish no lower than 4th. They go to, at worst, they go to that intercontinental playoff against most likely New Zealand. 1-game playoff for an official berth in the World Cup. A home win over Panama and a point against Costa Rica guarantees the U.S. finish in the top 3 and qualify directly for the World Cup. Because with those 2 games, you're not just taking points yourself, you're denying points to the 2 teams that can catch and pass you. Obviously, Mexico can. Mexico's going to, right? Mexico has a much easier window than the U.S. A draw at Mexico, great result, does not move the percentages of qualifying up or down by more than 2%. It's just not a significant result because the expected outcomes from Costa Rica's first 2 games and from Panama's first game are wins. So it's been hard for people to wrap their head around this. The Mexico game is by far the least important of this window for the U.S. national team. A win would be great, but even if we beat Mexico, we can still finish 5th place because Mexico, Costa Rica, and Panama could all pass us in the standings if things go wrong. And as we saw 4 years ago in Cuba, things can go very wrong. So my stance on this, and I've been loud about this on Twitter, and I wrote a column about it last week, is that we should save our first string. We should save our best guys to start the final 2 games because those are far and away more important than the Mexico game. Now, some people mistake that for me saying we should basically forfeit versus Mexico. We should not. We saw our B team, really B- team, go to the Gold Cup last year and beat Mexico and win a title doing that. The B team, send them to the Azteca, play them 60, 65 minutes, tell them to absolutely empty the tanks. Like make it just miserable for El Tri to play and spend everything. And then at the hour mark, 65-minute mark, if the game is still there for the taking, then you can bring in the starters. Get 20, 25 minutes out of Pulisic, see if Gio Reyna can go because he went 90 minutes this weekend for the first time since that El Salvador game a million years ago. If it's there, try to take it. But don't put all your eggs into that basket because the home game against Panama is far and away the most important game. Then Costa Rica, and then a million miles behind is that Mexico game. It's math. It's math, and you have to do the math in these situations.
Do you think Gregg Berhalter will follow that formula? I know it's math, I agree, but there's also just the emotionality of World Cup qualifying, and you hope that kind of goes out the window, but it's hard to remove that for fans, for players, for coaches, for anybody. This could be the last meaningful World Cup qualifier at Azteca. This is U.S.-Mexico. This is a game that gets built up to levels that other games in the region just don't have on this. It's not on the same scale. And that's been the case for the last 3. It's why they call them LLL Tree right now, or we do, to match the 3G. Do you think Gregg Berhalter will do this? Will rotate in that extreme of a fashion to prioritize Panama and Costa Rica? And even if he does, could it backfire if the result doesn't go your way against Mexico and the results go the right way for Costa Rica and Panama, which we'll talk about here in a second with Jaime Macias, and all of a sudden you're in a perilous spot.
Even if Berhalter plays the first string, a loss is still the most likely outcome at the Azteca. It just is what it is. It's the tallest mountain to climb in the region. So you play the first string, you burn them out. 72 hours later, they have to play this must-win game against Panama. This is the most important game that the U.S. has faced since Cuba. It's entirely possible, and we've seen it, it's entirely possible that the U.S. go to Mexico, play their hearts out, lose, come home, dead-legged against Panama, starters play again, lose, and now suddenly you have a third game at Costa Rica that is now must win, and your starters have played, 180 minutes over the past 6 days, half of them at altitude, 7,200 feet, half of them in the Florida sun and heat, and they have to go and beat Costa Rica in Costa Rica. That seems, it's a very plausible scenario.
It's a nightmare.
It's a nightmare, but it seems to be on the table. Here's the mitigating factor. Canada could get a point in Costa Rica. Instead of doing full squad rotation from one game to another, B team, A team, A team, it could be a B plus team, A minus team, or A minus team, B plus team. And on paper, the B plus team is good enough, more than good enough, to beat Panama at home. So maybe it doesn't have to be this extreme, but given what we've seen through the course of qualifying, and given what happened 4 years ago, it seems nuts to me to do anything but make sure your best team is fit and rested and ready to go for the most important game, which, again, is the home game versus Panama. Keep them fresh for that one.
Anyway, here's a quote from John Herdman to set the scene for Canada. There's a chance to come back home to Canada and have our moment with the fans that we've always dreamed about. That's what we're playing for in this window. Dave, what do you think about where the U.S. stands and the decisions that Gregg has to make?
You're gonna take me from a John Herdman quote there.
Yeah, no, I'm giving you like the yin and the yang here. One side's, hey, we're gonna celebrate, and the other side's, God, I hope we're gonna celebrate.
Yeah, from John Herdman's point of view, it's awesome. It also sucked because when they got to the Hex, which was Octo, which was a huge moment, they were playing in an empty stadium in Bridgeview, Illinois, with 0 fans, and you saw the party they had there and the celebration they had, in the heart of COVID. So this is, as I said at the open, this is going to be special. This is a moment that a lot of people have worked really long for, and I think that's sort of what we're going to see across this window is this isn't just a year of work or 4 years of work, right? When you're talking about the process that was built so that Jonathan Osorio could play at this level, so that Alphonso Davies could come through, the depth of the pool for Canada, building the CPL, having academy setups, all these things, that's all been 10, 15, 20 years of work for a lot of people, and a lot of people that have cared for a really long time. And I think you're starting to see the Canada fans who are sort of acknowledging what's about to happen, breathe and have this moment of, I've lived through the games at Honduras, I've lived through the heartbreak, I've lived through the Gold Cups, and I can't believe this is happening. And as I said, it's going to be pretty cool. That's pretty exciting to see. On the flip side for the U.S., Doyle sort of laid it out. I just think the overwhelming thing that I get is how complicated it is. I cannot tell you how I would deal with it if I was Gregg Berhalter. If this is a mystery of these 3 games, because you're talking about how does the altitude and smog at Azteca affect players. You're talking about a group of teams that have all struggled in the 3rd game of the window. So as Doyle lays that all out, Costa Rica and Panama have both struggled consistently in the 3rd game of the window, but a Panama team that will probably play a Canada team that's already qualified, and what do they look like? There is no formula for how to deal with this, and there's no exact answers. Because let's say the U.S. slips up against Panama, and they don't put anything out there to get a result at Mexico, you're going to be looking back at it and being pissed. And so there's not one right answer. And as Doyle sort of laid it out, there's a C team, there's a B team, there's a B plus team, there's an A team. I think the one nice thing is there are options with the U.S. They beat Mexico in the Nations League final, And then a month later, an almost completely different team beat Mexico in a Gold Cup final. So there are multiple ways for the U.S. to go about this and get a result to open things. There's multiple ways for them to go about it and get the result against Panama. And that's the other thing. Play your best team. Well, what is the best team? With this group, we don't actually know. With the amount of players that are missing. Then you've got yellow cards to deal with. 2 yellow cards in the cycle is a suspension. You've got those 5 players you named. What about people that pick up yellow cards against Mexico? How do you deal with them against Costa Rica? So I think to me, it's mainly just, I have no idea what this next week's going to look like. And that's also CONCACAF, right? I didn't know that Panama was going to score a goal that didn't cross the line and beat Mexico in the last game. And the U.S. was going to lose to Alvin Jones. Shout out OKC Energy or FC Tulsa. I don't remember where he played in Cuba. So there are a lot of things you don't know. And that's what's nerve wracking and that's what's big. But either way, this is a massive week of soccer.
All right, let's talk Mexico, U.S. and a little more I'm not going to be able to say it. Specificity. I don't even think I said it right there.
No, you got
just
it.
got the mumble mouth going here.
Specificity, you nailed it.
I'm okay. I'm a little shook right now after listening to all these scenarios. I can't. The math is math, but the scenarios scare me every single time. Well, what if then that? What's the 11 look like against Mexico in your opinion, Doyle? What should it be? Let's just kind of go back to front for the U.S. And you had one in your column, but then the lineup came out, and there are guys in there that did not then make the roster. Obviously, let's start at the back. Who plays goal? It's Stefan, right?
Yeah,
it's got to be.
Yep. Left to right.
So you have Stefan.
Left to right.
So wait, time out. The U.S. is up 1-0 in the 75th minute, and Zach Steffen gets a yellow card for time wasting, which is a possibility, and is suspended for Panama. It should be Zach Steffen, 100%.
Yeah, it should, and he should just know you can't take a yellow for time wasting. Like,
okay.
I mean, Ethan Horvath has had a good run over the last month. He was great coming in as emergency goalkeeper for the U.S. in the Nations League. But like you have to trust your players to understand the stakes and their own personal situation. So yeah, Zach Steffen. Left to right, I mean, George Bello, I guess, is at left back. I would go with Long and Miles Robinson, I think. And
just to reiterate, you're not going Jedi because this is for you not a situation with which to burn out Jedi before you hit Panama.
Yeah, especially because his overlapping runs have been huge for the U.S. and we're going to need them against Panama and Costa Rica. And he's not going to have the energy for that in the third game if he plays 90 minutes in this one at altitude and then 90 minutes in the heat. He's not going to have anything left to give against Costa Rica.
Bello, of course, you'll remember starting the Gold Cup final too. So
yeah, and he was good. He has not been good for Arminia Bielefeld, though. I would have preferred a different left back be called in, but it is what it is. Whatever. Long and Robinson in central defense. Yedlin at right back. A midfield trio of Sands, Acosta, and I guess De La Torre. And then a front three of left to right, Areola, Ferreira, and Roldan.
There is zero chance that is the team that steps on the field on Thursday night.
I get it. I mean, the question I have is, like, nobody has logged more minutes over the past 5 weeks than Christian Roldan. So he might be burnt out. But the bigger question, obviously, is, like, these guys are good players, with the exception of Miles Robinson. That's the B team. That's like that. That's the backups for this game. I don't think Berhalter's going to do it, but given the difference in magnitude in terms of this game versus the one 3 days later, to me, it just makes more sense to start it 60 minutes with these guys, do a line change at the hour, and if you can nick a point nick a point. If you can take all three, that's great. But it doesn't change the job, and the job is to beat Panama.
Dave, who do you think, like we're saying, hey, no, that's not who Gregg will go with. Who are the first team guys that you think Gregg will play from the start in this game?
I think I agree on Stefan. I guess I don't know who the first team right back is right now with no Dest. So I don't know who you're going to call a first team player there. I think in this group with the injury to Weston McKennie, I think Costa is a first team player, and I agree that I think he starts. I think that Musa will get the start in this game to control midfield, to give him a chance in this game, and then because you're saving Tyler for the second game, and you're probably going to split Kellen along with him as well. So then it becomes like a first and third game split. I agree with Paul Areola. The Roldan thing, it's logical in our worlds. It's just fairly unlikely that he's going to start him in a World Cup qualifier when he hasn't given him a chance to start at all, him being Gregg Berhalter. And so if it's not Pulisic, it's probably Jordan Morris. I wouldn't let Timothy Weah touch the field in this game. I wouldn't let Tyler Adams touch the field in this game because I would save them, both of them sitting on yellow cards, and I wouldn't let Jordy Pefok either. I think Pefok was brought in to score goals. He does all of his work in the box. And Panama is the game where you'll have possession, you'll have opportunities, and have him sitting in there scoring. And so I think it'll be Jesus Ferreira in this one, which right now Gregg Berhalter would probably say is his number one option at center forward. So across the team, even Doyle said, you are talking about 4 or 5 A-team players or best 11 or whatever it is. So I think the big question marks are the center backs, who's at the top of the heap, who's not, how do you use them, how do you handle them? Is Aaron Long playing this game because he's a B-team player? Or does Aaron Long play in this game because he's the A-team player and it's at Mexico? We don't totally know the answer to that right now for Gregg Berhalter, and then the other one is Pulisic. And Doyle's right for all the reasons that you save him. I've said this a couple times on this show. You're talking about a young team. You're building a culture still. I think it's still a little iffy who needs to be on the field for big moments. Who's a leader? Who does he listen to when they say, I want to play? And who does he say no to? And how do you handle that? Obviously, to Doyle's point, Panama's the biggest game. Again, Panama's the game you're going to dominate possession. Who's your most dangerous player? Who are your most dangerous attackers? And so that's sort of how you deal with Pulisic, I think, is how you see that and how you handle all of those moments. Like, there's no chance Pulisic doesn't start against Panama. So can he start both games back to back is the question that Gregg Berhalter has to answer and sort of figure out how he wants to use him.
And if things don't go right, how much of him is available for Costa Rica? Because as much as we want to downplay that, and if you're Gregg, you're probably preaching, let's finish this early. Let's make no chance that we go to Costa Rica in this situation, whether it be a draw and a win, or a win and a loss and a win, whatever it might be. Like, let's eliminate the bad stuff. We haven't talked once about Ricardo Pepi, and he sort of dominated some of that mid-qualifying conversation, and then the big move to Augsburg. You mentioned Doyle Bello at Bielefeld. Well, Pepi's got off this slow start at Augsburg. Where is Pepi in this picture?
Where's a center forward who hasn't scored since October in the picture? Like, he's gone half a year without putting the ball in the back of the net, and he doesn't do a lot of other stuff. I think he's a super sub this camp. I think if we're chasing a goal in any of these 3 games, that he'll be part of us throwing the kitchen sink in. But I think that Jesus Ferreira and Jordy Pefok are the 2 starters.
This is the elephant in the room for me, Weston McKennie. He's an absolute monster for us on set pieces. He is sort of a driving force behind a lot of the best moments the U.S. have sort of in creating goal-scoring opportunities from open play as well. He's an emotional bellwether. We haven't yet talked about what it means to have him on crutches and not in this team and what amounts to the make-or-break 3 games. How much does that hurt the U.S.? Where are we going to feel that pain, Dave? Like, where are moments where we're going to be sitting watching these games thinking, like, damn, I really wish we had Weston?
I think you feel it in 3 main ways. One is the conversation we're having around Pulisic and Adams changes because you have another leader and another guy who can sort of take minutes and be the one on the field if the other ones aren't. Like the way I talked about, does Pulisic need to be on the field? Changes if one of those other guys can play. Adams has the yellow card and Weston McKennie's hurt. So I think you see that. You also see that leadership that we saw in the last window when the team was dragging to pick them up, to be the one that press, create chances, start to turn up the energy. But the huge one is set pieces. And when you watch Mexico and what they struggle with, when you watch us beating them last summer, it had everything to do with set pieces. And that, again, is setting the tone in a way in which then it changes the confidence in the group for Panama and for Costa Rica. For all three of the games, he would be the best set piece option on the field for either team. And that is a huge loss and a huge miss for the U.S. And it's a huge loss and a huge miss without a clear replacement. You're going to have a player in there who plays a different way when the team's finally starting to settle, finally starting to find their feet. When you look, let's just say at this first game, the formula is hit against the break and score off set pieces. And you're missing your best player to help you do that. That's something that you can't change and can't fix.
What about Brendan Aronson, Doyle? What are we losing with Brendan out? He's been a part of every single game in qualifying.
He has that directness, his ability to play in transition against a Mexican team that is probably going to come up a little higher upfield. Like that is super useful. But I don't think losing Brendan Aronson, he's a good player. I don't think that comes close to losing Weston McKennie or Serginho Dest because Christian Pulisic is in great form. Timothy Weah has been our best attacker throughout qualifying. Gio Reyna is back. Those are our top three wingers. You know, the best wingers in MLS, or the best winger in MLS through a month has been Paul Arriola. He has plenty of CONCACAF experience. Christian Roldan has been amazing as a winger. He has plenty of CONCACAF experience. The second leading scorer on this roster behind Pulisic is Jordan Morris. He's a winger too. So if there is a place where we could afford to lose a really good depth piece, it was on the wing. Replacing McKennie is tough. It's tough. Like he's inimitable. Like you.
See, I can feel you sounding it out in your brain, just the way that I sometimes have to do. You're like, I can read.
I can't
this,
say it.
Can I say it? Let's try it out.
You cannot replicate what he brings with everything that David said. His ability to bring a physical presence to that midfield, his ability to hit game-breaking passes, his ability with those box-arriving runs and being goal dangerous in a way that, you know, spins a defender's head. And of course the set piece stuff. That's the big one. That's the one that's got my stomach in knots. The other, like, Dest is a big loss as well. Aronson is well below those two in terms of the impact.
What is wild about this World Cup qualifying cycle, because of COVID, you've got 3 games a window, no gaps between windows, right? It's basically been every month. We wouldn't have said that about Dest 2 months ago. Like, it has all changed so quickly. Weston McKennie wasn't in the team for a window in this. So it's all changed really quickly. It could change again, right? You could see a game-breaking performance from Jordan Morris down in Mexico. That elevates him back to where he was pre-injury, where it felt like he was a penned-in starter. You could see Paul Arriola play similar to how he has been playing for FC Dallas, off a guy like Jesus Ferreira, who he now plays with week in and week out for the last 6 to 8 weeks. And you could see him become a guy that now everyone shifts from, when they see in the lineup, which is unfair, to a guy that you're penciling in first and you're pushing into the lineup. Yedlin, Reggie Cannon, who has completely fallen behind in terms of the depth chart. Now Dest is out. Does he get an opportunity and give you a strong performance in one of these games? So to bring positive, there is a ton of depth and talent in the pool because the window's been so condensed or qualifying. We haven't seen it all at times, and there are still pieces that we're learning about and that are going to get opportunities here. I will say the positive part of me is I think this U.S. team plays better against good teams and plays better against the ball. And so when you look at 2 of the 3 matchups here, I think they actually fit for the U.S. better than what you saw against El Salvador last window and against Canada up in Canada. And even if it's not your A team, or even if you have to deal with the travel and the humidity and the smog and altitude and all those things, like this U.S.-Mexico game sets up fairly well for the U.S. You've got a Mexican team under a ton of pressure. You've got a number of players who aren't in great form. And you've got a coaching staff that is being berated every time they come in front of the media about, what are you doing? How do you believe you deserve to coach this team? Why have you not quit yet? That all adds to the pressure in the way that they have to play for a U.S. team, which, as Doyle has laid out, the expectations and the necessity on this game are much less.
But emotionally, but perception-wise, but understandably, when you're a U.S. team walking to the Azteca, things get ratcheted up, and some of that perspective has a way of trickling away at times. You've watched a bunch of Mexico this morning, and we watch all those games otherwise. No Andres Guardado. That's a big loss. So Tata's got to figure out who goes in that midfield with Edson Alvarez and Ache, who's in great form. But the attacking players aren't in the best form they could possibly be in outside of maybe Tecatito. How do you think Mexico approaches this game?
It's going to be their best team. They're going to roll out their best 11. You mentioned the question in central midfield. I think Charlie Rodriguez kind of earned that spot, so I'd be surprised not to see him alongside the other two. It feels like Costa has gotten himself into the conversation, but it always falls back to Memo Ochoa in goal. Arteaga is starting to get a ton of minutes over in Belgium, so he probably gets the start on the left side. I think there's a decent chance Julian Araujo gets the start at right back, if not in this game and one of the games, because of the element he adds offensively that Jonathan Sanchez has scored but isn't really able to get up and down the line as much. And the front three is going to be the front three, right? It's Chucky, it's Raul Jimenez, it's Tecatito. And as you mentioned, Jimenez and Chucky maybe not coming into the best of form. They're arguably the two best players in the region when they're on. I think Jimenez is currently the best player, not a better ceiling than or at his position than Alphonso Davies, but in terms of quality of soccer player and obviously in his prime. And when he's on, he can be the best creator on the field as well as the best finisher. And so it's a different test the U.S. has dealt with. I think when Chucky's been on the field, which hasn't been a ton, he's given the U.S. nightmares because he finds really awkward spaces. He's a winger that is happy to play inside. He's a goal scorer that can come from the outside. Obviously, we saw him terrorize us in the Nations League final, or terrorize the U.S. in the Nations League final. And he is always on when he gets to the Mexican national team, whatever's happening at Napoli. So this is a team that obviously has high-level quality, but it hasn't come together for them. Goal scoring's been a huge issue for Mexico in qualifying. A lot of it has come from the penalty spot or really late-game goals, which is that big advantage being at home, being at altitude, has been wearing teams down and getting something late.
I've been thinking about these lineups and how we sort of rotate or think about rotating players, or how Greg will, Doyle. I'm curious, what is your 11 against Panama? Like, what would be the biggest game since Cuva? Must get 3 points. We're not playing around. Every decision comes down to that entirely. Not what's going to happen in Costa Rica, et cetera. But if we win this, we at least have a share. What is that team?
I would roll out the same 11 for the final two games. Stefan, left to right on the back line, Anthony Robinson, Miles Robinson, Walker Zimmerman, Reggie Cannon. The midfield of Adams, Musa, and Reyna. I'm playing Reyna as an 8 in this one. And then left to right, Pulisic, Pifak, and Timothy Weah. Now, the only alteration, like I would, that's what I would start against Panama. Against Costa Rica, the only potential alterations I would make is maybe drop Miles Robinson for Aaron Long if Robinson's legs are dead after 2 games, and maybe go back to Jesus Ferreira against the Ticos instead of Jordi Pifak if Pifak's not great. But that's the starting group for those final 2 games, and those are the guys you trust to say, you know, we can go out and we can get 4 points and get us through and into Qatar.
You wouldn't add Kellen for Gio for a game at Costa Rica?
Nope.
Where at most you'd need a tie?
Nope.
Interesting. And you'd play Gio 2 straight 90s after
I'm not
the
saying
injuries come
I'd
off
play him 90, right? Like he would be someone who I'm
right.
monitoring, like maybe only 60 against Panama. You bring De La Torre in, who I would, presume to play 90 against Mexico. Hope he's good for 30, 3 days later against Panama. But yeah, and like honestly, hope that your 11 can go out there and finish Panama in the first half, and can make some leg saving subs and potentially card saving subs because of that. Because like if the U.S. get a big lead, and it's a massive if against Panama, and Weah and Adams are still out there on yellow cards in the 65th minute. Maybe you take those guys off.
Get them off.
Yeah. Yep. So, but that
Pifak versus Jesus Ferreira. Explain to me that preference in your mind.
Panama's going to absorb. The U.S. is going to have a lot of the ball versus Panama. It's going to be a battle in the box. It's going to be a lot of set pieces. Pifak is a huge dude. He's in great goal scoring form. It's a lesser league. The Swiss league is not as good as MLS, but it doesn't matter. If you're in good form, you're in good form. And he's going to be in the box being a nightmare to deal with, whether it's open play or set pieces. Set pieces matter a ton. I like the idea of going into these games with a big old target forward who can dominate teams in the air. And I like going into these games with 3 A-plus targets on set pieces. And that's what you would have if any backline combination of Robinson, Long, and Zimmerman and Pifak up top, then you have 3 A-plus targets out there.
Whew. A lot of complicated factors here. We were speaking about this before the ball is kicked, before yellow cards can be handed out, before goals can be scored, before the table can be shuffled.
Just a reminder that last window, it was U.S. home to Panama in the second to last game in Orlando, and the U.S. jumped on Panama and sort of blew them off the field.
Annihilated.
This is a different Panama team. Yeah. This is a different Panama team slightly. I think it's a younger backline, so probably able to cover more ground, but also I think the same formula exists, which is press them, put them under pressure, attack with a ton of numbers, and you'll be able to find opportunities and probably be able to get out to a lead. And this is not a team that's set up to chase. And they're not a team that's set up to create a ton of chances, right? They want to keep games tight and then break through with a half chance. They have set pieces and then great ability on the wings, 1v1, to get crosses into big bodies like Blackburn, Annabelle Godoy crashing. They have good options to finish, but they don't really pick teams apart in possession. And you also kind of want to break their belief. That's been the one thing I think Panama, better than any other team, maybe except Canada, in the qualifying cycle, just the genuine belief as they stay in games or come back in games that they belong, that they will get the result. And that's what Christensen's been able to accomplish, I think, as their head coach at a time when it felt like they were between generations and this wasn't a team that could compete. And so can you come out, get 2 goals early, get the crowd, which in Orlando, it feels like everyone's right on top of you. It gets loud, fast, and make them sort of feel like, okay, let's save something for the next game. Because that's the calculation for everyone. And Panama has not been a team that's rotated their rosters heavily from game to game. And Costa Rica the same. And so for Panama, can you put them in a spot where they say, this isn't worth it for us for the same reasons that you're talking about, Adams and Weah and all these guys coming off? Can you put Panama in that spot in the second game? And then can you come into Costa Rica in the third game? And even though you have to travel and play at Costa Rica, do you have fresher legs, right? Has Borges gone 2 straight games at that point? Has Calvo, has Kendall Waston? Like, they can't afford to slip up. So a lot of these players who, in the case of Costa Rica, are on the wrong side of 30 are probably going to have played 180 minutes going into that third game.
Costa Rica and Panama got to handle business in the first match day as well. Costa Rica hosting Canada, as we said, Panama hosting Honduras. Honduras is by far the easiest of the two. Canada, not as in the same form, let's say, at club level, their players as they were in previous 3-day match days, but still playing for that pot 3, still playing to seal their fate. Before we get to Jaime Macias, who will give us even more insight on Costa Rica and Panama and what faces them, anything to wrap up for the U.S.? Anything to look ahead to in that first game against Costa Rica for Canada that you're especially paying attention to?
I think you mentioned some of the guys that have gone to Europe, right? Tejan's playing at left wing back right now in Belgium. Richie Larea hasn't broken into the team. Steven Eustachio got his first start for Porto a week ago, hasn't been an every game player. So how does John Herdman use them in terms of you don't want to push them if they're not 90 minutes fit or 60 minutes at a high level on the road fit? How does John Herdman use them to sort of cycle them back into the team? And then if I'm a Canada fan, the one thing I'm looking at this window from an overall soccer point of view is still the back three. I think Steven Vittoria has been phenomenal. I love Kamal Miller. Alistair Johnson's obviously been a key part of that. Scott Kennedy has pushed those guys. And when he was healthy, looked like he was a starter. And with Steven Vittoria, you're looking at a guy who's 35 years old. So I still think there's minutes to be earned there. Maybe even a rotation to what is the best 11. And so I think that'll be interesting. And then you want to see the guys, especially if they get the job done early. Can Ugbo get a start? He's got 2 goals over the last 2 weeks in Ligue 1. Can he get a start for you up top? Does Raheem Edwards come to the team and show stuff? I think there's guys that are sort of fighting for minutes where this is a chance to potentially reward them after you've qualified and locked everything in, which all of that is exciting. It's where I wish the U.S. was at coming into this window.
Any final thoughts, Doyle, on the U.S. side? Anything still in your tank?
Let me just give you one
put onto the world
on Canada real quick. Kamal Miller has logged a ton of minutes for CF Montreal over the past month, and he has pretty clearly broken down over the last 3 games or so. He just has not looked himself. So expect some, like, he's usually part of their first 11, no question about it. Expect him to be rotated out probably for that first game down in Costa Rica. As for the U.S., no, I've kind of laid it all out, and I think I'll just say that, like, if these guys go out there and execute, then they'll qualify. You know, I'm making a big deal of the lineup choices because I remember 4 years ago, like the U.S. we were just talking about, the U.S. crushed Panama in what was supposed to be the biggest game, and that was it. All we needed to do was go to Trinidad and Tobago, get a point against a semi-pro team, essentially, and we were in. But Bruce didn't rotate. He didn't rotate the team. He trotted out the same 11. Paul Arriola, Darlington Nagbe, Dempsey, they all said afterwards they were completely exhausted because the energy they had expended. Like, that has to be a lesson on how you manage teams and how you manage these games. But even so, that game in Cuba was a lack of execution. It was a lack of energy. If the U.S. comes out and plays with energy and executes well, it really shouldn't matter who's out there in all 3 of these games. Like, they should come out of this with, 5 or 6 points. Maybe even 7 points. And if that's the case, then they'll go to Qatar.
After all we did, I do have to mention that I've obviously watched these games for about 20 years, and there is nothing I enjoy more than Mexican media covering a Mexico team after they've lost to the U.S. or have dropped results to the U.S. So there is still the possibility that this week could end on quite a high. And there is, we are all partners in this global North American soccer sphere. We all want the best for Leagues Cup and 2026 World Cup. But for 90 minutes or 120 minutes, maybe I'll give a 15 before, 15 after buffer zone on Thursday night. It would be fun to watch it go wrong for Mexico.
It's interesting to look at this, and I remember the last successful cycle, at least in leading up to 14, and the Graham Sanzusi and the raft that he threw to Mexico. And you look at these games and what's going to happen here. And if the U.S. beat Mexico, the U.S. will still perhaps be the rescuer there for Mexico if they can't get it going, because then they have the competition in Costa Rica as well as Panama coming up. Whereas Mexico is going to play 2 teams that have nothing to play for, basically in Honduras and El Salvador, other than pride. So once again, the U.S. could be in a place where we knock down Mexico and then pick them back up, perhaps.
Now that I got us here, should we start talking pot A? Pot 1? The U.S. sneaking into the top 8 in the world? Should we get there?
Oh, boy.
Should we just turn it all around? Turn the energy around?
No. It has to be real before we get there. All right. Let's get to Jaime
Italy and
Macias. He's got
Portugal
more for
are
us
out.
on
North
Costa Rica,
Macedonia's in.
Panama, MLS, and CONMEBOL. We'll be right back. All right. It's an AT&T 5G call to the field. To Miami we go to Jaime Macias. Man, what's up? Love the backdrop. 10 out of 10 on Background Raider. You can hear him. You can watch him. Football MLS, MLS Espanol. We're happy to have you, Jaime.
How you doing, Andrew? Pleasure being in the show with you.
Let's dig in. So we've done the U.S., we've done Canada. We're going to talk through it all, but I think you're the perfect guy to help us out a little bit with Central America, with Costa Rica, with Panama, with what MLSers are doing in CONMEBOL, which I think is a little bit out of sight, out of mind for those of us who are just crazy anxiety levels at this point over CONCACAF. Tell people about yourself real quick before we get rolling. Help people understand who Jaime is.
Well, I'm a soccer analyst. I was born in Ecuador. I travel around the world. I cover World Cups, trying to understand the game. I play it legally. I'm an ex-player. I never make the debut, but I sit on the bench once, so I think that one counts. So, and I love motor racing.
You see the helmet in the background. I pulled out a Jaime before we did this show that he actually was second in South America in go-karting as a young man. Incredible stuff. You're a true Renaissance man, Jaime. Let's just dive in, and we'll start with a tweet you put out recently that when I saw it gave me shivers. And basically it was laying out the scenarios, whether the U.S. win or Mexico win or they draw, if Costa Rica and Panama win their opening games of these final triple headers here in CONCACAF, what the standings will look like. Walk people through just how precarious this could possibly be.
Okay. If Mexico and the U.S. draw, we will get to the penultimate round with U.S. and Mexico tied in 22 points, Panama with 20 in the playoff pot, and Costa Rica out of the World Cup with 19. If there is a winner in Mexico and the U.S., the winner will have 24 points. 3 points behind will be the other team, either Mexico and the U.S. Panama will be 1 point behind in the playoff spot, and Costa Rica will be 1 point or 2 points out of a direct spot to the World Cup in the 5th place. So I feel there's a lot of focus on Mexico-US and the outcome of that game, but not enough focus on what the math are going to show if the teams that are coming behind win their games. It's just pure math. Mexico and the US cannot win this Thursday. Somebody's going to drop points, and that's going to tie everything up.
Canada is Costa Rica's opponent. In Costa Rica, we know how difficult that is, of course. And then Panama is going to have Honduras in Panama. Honduras has already eliminated their star players, are not with the squad for this round of qualifiers. Yeah, it's going to get a little bit nervy, is what I'm saying. And if you're going to watch the watch-along show, better believe we're going to have on other screens these other games happening and update you on those because it all matters in these final 3 rounds. Let's dive into Costa Rica. Of course, they're hosting Canada. Canada feels like they're on the brink. They feel good. The result in this game would make them feel better, but over the course of the next 8 days or so, we fully expect that they will qualify directly into the World Cup. Knock on wood for John Herdman. But you interviewed Costa Rica manager Luis Fernando Suarez recently. Give us an idea of what you guys talked about, what you took away. Where is Costa Rica heading into these final 3 games?
The first thing preview to the game is that I feel like it's the first time Canada is going to face a team that is in a better momentum than them. And that's not hard. And that's very hard to point. Like Canada always gets at the team that was performing the better, that gets the better momentum in every of these World Cup qualifier games. And what Costa Rica had gained after scoring 7 points of the last 9, one of those scoring against Mexico, winning the game after visiting Mexico, something that nobody else have done in this qualifier, put the morale so high. Let's not forget that Costa Rica, on age average, is a team with the highest age average on this CONCACAF qualifier. And that was a big challenge for Luis Fernando Suarez. Managing an age team with the amount of triple headers that we have had. We only have one not triple header round, that was the one on November. And making that click was challenging, especially at the beginning. But I think that the team is performing now. They have a solid starting 11, especially defensively. And they have some veteran players that are coming into the pitch for the last part of the matches, with the matches normally level, 0-0, and that's when Costa Rica is making the difference. I think Fernando Suarez had made an amazing job managing this team.
How difficult did he say it was with these triple headers? We've talked about a lot, okay, for Central American teams in particular who don't have the depth of maybe a Canada or a US or a Mexico, how do they handle the final game of the window? And it hasn't always gone that well. But with the oldest team as well, how has Suarez managed this? What were the challenges he faced?
He had need to look and promote young players, but he had made an amazing job, and he thanks the local league because they had let him stop the local tournament for him to have working spaces with those young players, because they have what he says is like a lost generation. Okay, you get the generation that performed tremendously in Brazil 2014. The next generation, they didn't make it to the level they were expected to be. They never became the players they should be. The only one is it's Joel Campbell. And then you have all these young 21, 22-year-old players that were so far away from performing in a national team or for being starting in a national team. And that's the work he had been doing in the local tournament. Stopping the tournament for a week, finding players, working with players, trying to test new players. And he had found some specific names that give him a base on the team that can hold the team together to rotate for the veterans. And the veterans at the end, they are playing all the games, but they're not playing the 90 minutes of all the games. They are closing the games when the team is needing to accelerate to get the results.
What role is Joel Campbell going to play in your mind? Because when I look at this Costa Rica team, it sort of feels like a reflection back at me of Brazil, at least in a tactical sort of game approach sense. They're going to have five in the back. They're going to sit back. They're not going to expose themselves. And they're going to say, look, we believe that there'll be 3 or 4 times a match where we'll get on the counter, we'll get in transition, and we'll get a goal out of it, and we'll win 1-0. You look at their results, they've only scored more goals than one twice in 11 matches, but then they have Keylor Navas. Joel Campbell seems like the danger man, and U.S. fans know that. Everybody in this region knows that. He's at Rayados now, scoring goals in Liga MX still. How do you handle him if you're Canada?
It's very hard to handle him because even though in the tactical board he will play as number 9, he is somebody that is coming backwards, that is starting on the side. It's very hard to reference him. As you said, I think that Costa Rica is going to play with 5 at the back because Canada plays with 5 at the back. And something that Suarez has been doing is trying to line his defense by the amount of players that the opponent team has on defense. So the wingers play close to each other and they don't have these big gaps on the wings. And he has been trying, sometimes it's Ortiz, but he's trying to put somebody else next to Campbell, just to reference him. That player usually does not touch the ball very much. It's just covering the open gap that Campbell is opening. So when Campbell comes and works from behind and start the counterattack, well, Ortiz probably will open the field. When Campbell is playing as a number 9, this striker will go to the wing and make the defense wider. So giving freedom from Campbell, it's the challenge for Suarez. But the performance for Campbell in this last part of the qualifier is amazing. I think Joel Campbell was the best player of the triple header in whole CONCACAF in January.
And if he is this time around, you might be seeing Costa Rica celebrating an automatic berth, TBD. It also helps to have Keylor Navas. You sort of teased it there. On the bench for Emelec in Ecuador, the Giants, Gigantes. You got that? You got on that bench the one time. That's all you need, man. Then you make a career in journalism. So you know goalkeeping. Keylor Navas, there's a certain stat that you threw at me in our pre-show meeting. Throw it out to the people at home right now and tell me what difference he can make. I mean, Keylor Navas is the difference between going to a World Cup and not going.
Costa Rica have only lost 1 game with Keylor Navas at goal. And it was with a goal from the spot against Mexico in the game in San Jose. All the other games that Costa Rica have lost, Navas was not on goal. Against the US, Navas got injured at halftime. The winning goal was late on the game. And against Canada, Navas was not on goal either. He was injured. So that's what he's capable of doing. And if you don't believe me, you should ask PSG in Champions League.
As a goalkeeper, what do you like about Keylor Navas? Professional to professional. Look, slightly different levels, Jaime, but
I think, look, Keylor adapt to any kind of game. Like he's a natural. Like you get goalkeepers that are big and heavy, and when they go and play with a team that play with the defensive line a little high on the pitch, they struggle because they have too much meters to cover. And then you got goalkeepers that are very agile, and when they play against a team that is defending very deep, they don't have room to make the difference. Keylor has performed with teams that play high on the pitch and with teams that defend very close to his goal. He is a guy with natural reaction and with uncommon speed on his legs for a goalkeeper to solve different scenarios and different situations. So his national team played very different than what his team does. And he is still amazing. And he's a shot saver. And what we get in qualifiers, because teams are desperate and because they don't have teams time to work, it's a lot of shots. And that's when he is more comfortable on goal.
So Costa Rica hosting Canada. And of course, the U.S. will go to Costa Rica on what will promise to be a very nervous evening unless results really go the U.S.'s way over the course of the first couple match days here. Can Costa Rica beat Canada? Because in your math there at the beginning of this segment here, part of the nervousness comes from Panama winning against Honduras, very plausible, but also Costa Rica winning at home against Canada, also very plausible, but Canada haven't lost in the octagonal yet. So can Costa Rica do it?
I think they can. I think they can do it. First of all, as I told you before, it's the first time Canada is facing a team that is in a better momentum wave than they are. I think that from a morale point, Costa Rica is flying. They were out. And now they are a couple of points away from being in, not even the playoff directly. Costa Rica basically depends on their self. Like depending on the US-Mexico match, Costa Rica will depend on themselves to qualify directly. Like win against the US. I think they can do it, and that's gonna put up a whole amount of pressure. Andrew, I will not. It's not something I would like to happen. But I think that the possibility that the U.S. travels to San Jose needing at least 1 point to qualify directly to, I think it's a big scenario.
God, don't like that. Not a big fan of that. We'll see what happens. Yeah,
Pure math.
I know, man. I don't like math. I believe in math, but I don't like it. Costa Rica, of course, hosting Canada. We will be watching that one live with DeMarcus Beasley on Thursday, along with the Mexico-U.S. match in Azteca, which is going to be a big one. And then Panama is the second match. And we've talked a lot about this already on the show. You know, Doyle's take is that, look, nothing matters as much as Panama at home. And, you know, nothing mattered as much as Panama at home last time around. You know, we had to get a result in Cuba, of course. We got that result. But Panama has been one of the stories of this confederation outside of Canada, maybe in the whole world, the way that they have sort of risen up and made a play for the third spot in an automatic bid. They underperformed in January, at least compared to the rest of their qualification cycle. Why is that, do you think?
The Canada squad is full of players who play in Central European leagues, MLS, and South American leagues, which means that for that January date, they were either in a winter break or in an off-season period. So they just came together with at least a month without playing soccer to perform in 3 games that include a visit to Mexico. That's why Panama underperformed in January.
Do you think that changes this time around?
Absolutely. Everybody's playing. Everybody's starting on their teams. Everybody's scoring. They have found some new players. Ismael Diaz. He had been playing Copa Libertadores with Universidad Católica in Ecuador, scoring goals in both tournaments. Godoy, we have seen him how he's performing in Nashville. Carrasquilla, those two are the engines of this team, and they are both performing at a great level in MLS. Then you got Bárcenas, that is performing at a great level in the Spanish league, well, in the second division in Spain. So their performance are back as they were October, November.
What do you think the scenario is? And we'll skip over Honduras. This is on Panama. They got to win at home against Honduras. If you can't do that, then when it comes to qualification, you got to look at yourselves a little bit. But then going to the U.S., a difficult game. How does Panama get a result against the United States if they are going to get one?
The ability to dominate the middle of the pitch. Let's not forget that they dominate Canada in Toronto. Then they had a couple of mistakes in set pieces and Canada get back into the game and outscore them by a 4-1. But there were 60 minutes where Panama dominate Canada in Toronto. That's a big statement. And one of the biggest difference is how different this team played from what Bolillo Gomez did when they qualified for the World Cup. That Bolillo team was a very defensive team, a very solid team with a long of crosses and long balls that take the advantage. This is a team that you cannot fight in the middle of the pitch. They will destroy you with the possession of the ball. If you see the games, they were lacking on shooting accuracy. But even the games they lost, they lost against Costa Rica 1-0, and the best player of the pitch was Keylor Navas. We talk about him.
Yeah.
But if we do like a merit result, Panama dominate Costa Rica that day. This is a team that is capable of producing great soccer from the middle of the pitch. And if their strikers are back at the form, well, this is a team that is going to score goals.
Don't forget, by the way, folks, the U.S. lost in Panama to a Godoy goal in the 54th minute and Estadio Romel Fernandez. So this is not out of the realm of possibility. What Costa Rica, what Panama can do against Canada and the U.S., against this entire region, we've seen it in these qualifiers. And Costa Rica with some momentum, Panama trying to rebuild their momentum, both of them trying to get the same place that the U.S. and Canada will go.
There is another detail over there. Christensen does not rotate much. He likes his starting 11. He feels that he prefers his starting 11, even if they are tired, than touching the team too much on starting 11s. And that game against Canada that they lost was the third game of a triple header. So the team started dropping their performance at the second half of the third game. The US game is going to be playing Orlando, where the climate is very similar to Panama. And it's going to be the second one of the 3 games.
Give me a little insight on Thomas Christensen, the manager of Panama. You mentioned something when we were talking before that I just want the people at home to know, because I didn't personally know. When I saw Thomas Christensen, a Dane managing Panama, he's been all around the world as a player and as a coach. But I just thought to myself, that's interesting. Turns out he has a tie back to the Canaleros.
He lived in Panama when he was a little boy because of his family living there. He lived in the region. He played soccer in the region. Played soccer, baby soccer, like with young boys. And he lived a couple of years there when he was a little boy. So he knew where he was going back, the culture, and he knew about the country. And one of the weird things is that Jaime Penedo, when he's the sporting director of the national team, and he started making these interviews to see who is the coach. Everything via Zoom. They could not travel. And he find out where he had managed and everything. And that was the perfect click. The style they were trying to show, the different cultures Christensen had managed in. And at the end, he happened to have a little tie with Panama.
And here you have it. On the brink of potential World Cup qualification, right now in the playoff spot are Panama, Costa Rica in 5th, 1 point behind Canada. Top with 25 points, US 21, Mexico 21, 17-16. And then at the bottom, TBD on results. Come on, man. Fight to the final whistle, El Salvador, Jamaica, and Honduras. We need you, U.S. fans say, Canada fans say, Mexico fans definitely say, and perhaps Panama and Costa Rica as well. Before I let you go, Jaime, people can follow him, by the way, on Twitter, Jaime F. Macias. Tell me about CONMEBOL, because this is we get so focused on CONCACAF because of the U.S. and Canada and Mexico and all the MLS players that play in Central America as well, that we forget that there's a big contingent down in South America. What's at stake for MLSers in this international break in South America?
Well, one of the teams with more MLSers is Ecuador, and Ecuador is kind of in the same position that Canada is here in CONCACAF. Like they are virtually in. Like a catastrophe needs to happen for Ecuador not to qualify, because they have +10 on goal average. Their rivals are playing between them. So basically, Ecuador it's in. But the big game everybody should watch in CONMEBOL is the Uruguay-Peru. That's the game that is deciding the last spot and the playoff spot. The logical result is a win for Uruguay in Montevideo. Facundo Torres is going to be facing Pedro Gallese. They played in LA together last weekend. Now they're going to be facing each other. But if that's not the result, we're going to get to the last round with Uruguay, Peru, Colombia, and Chile fighting for the last spot and a half for the World Cup. So that's going to be madness.
Keep an eye on CONMEBOL. Keep an eye on Jaime Macias. Jaime, it's been great to chat with you. The most interesting man in MLS Digital, I would have to say. Pleasure talking, man.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Anytime you need, I'm here.
All right, big thanks to Jaime. Truly a fascinating dude. Like, absolutely fascinating. From go-kart racing to being a backup for Emelec to now doing the media game in North America.
We did one of those weird soccer moments. I would call it Jewish geography. I don't think you guys play that game as often.
It's the Mennonite game.
Right, there you go.
Buddy.
Where we realized we were both in the same place, potentially watching an 06 Ecuador-England World Cup game in New York City. So what a coincidence. And now we made each other for real 15 years later.
That's one of those things that I would just never be surprised by. Like when you said that to me, like, turns out I was at an Ecuadorian bar in 06 and he was there. Like, oh, that makes plenty of sense. All right. Thursday, Mexico, US, Paramount Plus, Unimas Turien, CBS Sports Network, Costa Rica, Canada. That one's on Paramount Plus. Both of them right at 10 p.m. Eastern. We have the watch-along show that'll start about 20 minutes before with DeMarcus Beasley. We'll watch it all together with you. So come on Twitch, come on YouTube Live. Come commiserate, come celebrate, come fill in the blank with us, and listen to some great stories and insight from DeMarcus Beasley as well. All right, let's get to the final little topic here that I have for us. Victor Montagliani said at SoccerX, I think, that he has a hope that CONCACAF would have 8 spots in the 2026 World Cup, with the 3 hosts, US, Canada, and Mexico, joined by 3 more direct qualifiers and then a pair of teams perhaps coming through the playoffs. That's the up to 8 spots, but 6 guaranteed. Which just reminds me, and should remind all of us, that these 3 games, that might be it for what we've become accustomed to when it comes to World Cup qualifying out of CONCACAF, and really the entire world, given the expansion from 32 to 48 teams. So in this final, hurrah in a way, how are we feeling? And how are we feeling about the possible expansion within our region to this many teams, where you remove some of this nervousness for Panamas and Costa Ricas, and then perhaps a Honduras or a Jamaica or, a Haiti even, or fill in the blank upstarts? What is this moment in our region and in the world of soccer?
I don't know yet.
Are you wistful a little bit? Are you like,
Nope.
Is there any bit of sadness that's
World
crept
Cup qualifying is absolutely miserable. And with the expansion of 48 teams, well, first of all, the U.S. hosting in 2026, automatic qualification, like there's not going to be any World Cup qualifiers until the 2030 cycle. So I'm glad to be done with it for the next 7 years. That's one. And two is once they expand to 48, and let's say CONCACAF only gets up to 5.5, I mean, it's over. The high pressure nature of qualifiers just kind of goes away, because even USSF couldn't fuck it up badly enough for the US to finish lower than 5th. So I'm not wistful about not having these moments anymore. I'm just not. I'm glad we're almost done with them, and I hope a week from now we're able to come on this show and feel like we were all being way too dramatic. And that
I will actually listen back to the show next week and be like, "Oh, get over yourself, David. Get over yourself.
Who are you? Jeez. What are you guys talking about Cuva for? God, doom and gloom, Chicken Little times 3.
I don't understand how this fan base watched what happened in Cuva 4 years ago and are like, no, we got this. You go all out in the first game. Don't rotate. Play your best players every game. It's like, at some point you have to learn the lessons of the past. At some point you have to learn the lessons of history. Hopefully Gregg Berhalter has, and hopefully it makes for a much more pleasant extra time next Monday. And I will be glad to be done with these types of qualifying scenarios for the rest of my damn life.
I think there's very few things that I think are probably done correct. Feels like 32 teams in a World Cup is right. World Cup qualifying matters across the world.
Agree completely with that.
Yeah, but most teams that really deserve it get in. You have a good level of competition in the tournament. Anyone can really beat anyone. You've seen like a Croatia type run to a final for a team that was a pretty big underdog, but at the same time, you do have favorites that you can sort of story build around for people around the world. So that's upsetting, I think, in terms of it changing, because I think World Cup qualifying around the world is, for a lot of countries, it is the one big moment where your big players come back and you can watch them as a fan, and you can watch Neymar play in your country. You can watch Son play in your country. Like, you can go.
And it means everything.
Yeah.
There's no like, oh, well, what are the stakes
right.
here?
And
no, the stakes are extremely crystal
And
clear.
as great as a crowd looks for a Persepolis game in Tehran, it looks different for an Iran national team game, right? Or for Nigeria hosting Ghana, first the Nigerian League final, or, the CAF final for Al Ali versus what an Egypt game looks like. I think it'll be sort of sad when some of that goes away, but at the same time, you just bump it down a level. And now you're talking about Togo and Gabon hosting legitimate World Cup qualifiers because they are pushing towards that. And you're talking about Peru and Venezuela hosting games that can push them in. And so it'll be different. I think it is going to be a big loss. Unfortunately, because of COVID, I had these like few games penciled that I was going to try and get to that I didn't go to any of them. I think a Uruguay game at the Centenario is just something that's unique and special, and when Cavani's there and all that stuff. But Uruguay will, like Doyle said, they'll probably just be in pretty much every time going forward. And so it'll change. It'll be different, but it could still be a cool event that goes on around the world. I mean, Panama are going to be favorites in the next World Cup qualifying cycle. Like, El Salvador might be favorites. Curacao has something to build towards. Suriname, Jamaica. So as much as there'll be stuff going away that will suck, mainly being US-Mexico games that matter and at the Azteca, there could be some interesting new traditions that sort of pop up.
All right, end of an era. Here we are. All there is left to do now is to just watch the games and slog through it and hope for the very, very best. Thursday, Sunday, and Wednesday. Watch along shows for all of them. If you turn on the game, you'll know that we are live on Twitch and YouTube Live. We will be there on Mondays and Thursdays to wrap it all up on Extra Time. There's another Extra Time coming this week, by the way, unless Next Pro kicks off this weekend. Charles Alchek and Ali Curtis, who are on the business and the sporting side of getting that league off the ground, will be with us for a show we'll release Thursday afternoon at our normal time, 5 p.m. Eastern. Right before, if you need something to like kill a little time and some nervous energy right before that US-Mexico game, that'll be coming out for you. But otherwise, we'll see you on the live stream. That's it for us. Best of luck. Into the breach we go. Adios. Congratulations, you made it through more than an hour of Extra Time. That means you love the show, and if you love the show, you probably want more episodes. Click right here for more episodes of Extra Time, and here to subscribe to the MLS YouTube channel. Thanks for following along.